অলপ দিন আগতে অমিত শাহ অনাৰেবল ইউনিয়ন হোম মিনিষ্টাৰ ভিজিট কৰিছে আৰু ভিজিট কৰিনা নাগা মানুহ সব নাগা সলিউশনছ আহিব কৰিনা হপ ডাঙৰতে ৰখি আছে ইটো ৰখা টাইম সময়তে আমি খান দেখি পাই আছে Nscn কে লগা মাজত কাংগো লগা পাৰ্টি মাজতে জামেলা ডাঙৰ ওলাই কিনা কাংগো লগা পাৰ্টিৰ পৰা Isak Sumi যোনটো আটো Kilonser আছে তাইকি ইম্পিচমেন্ট কৰা লগা নোটিফিকেশনছ ওলাইছে ইটো ওলাই কিনা তেলেকো পুষ্টিতে জামেলা ডাঙৰ ওলাইছে হলিবি ইটো নিউট্ৰেলাইজ হৈ যাইছে অন দ্য আদাৰ সাইড Isak Sumi লগা ইম্পিচমেন্ট লগা ওপৰতে Sumi হুহু Western Sumi Youth Front ইটো কান পৰা তাইকি সাপোর্ট কৰা লগা আমি খান দেখি পাইছে হলিবি এতিয়া Nscn কে কাংগো পাৰ্টিৰ পৰা যোনটো ইম্পিচমেন্ট দিছে ইটো ফাইনাল আছে কোনা আমি খান শুনি পাইছে হলিবি আজি মৰ্নিং ইয়াতে Toluvi লগা ভিলেজ তে Nscn কে Isak Sumi ato Kilonser bra emergency press conference ekta matina ase aro aji ami kan sources pra hunai sabte aji tai yade muk khulibo aro yade itu muk khula laga opore dangor outcome ekta pabo gona ami kan jani ase holibe yade question dangor ekta do ami kan Nagaland de thaka manu sob 19 lakhs population bra itu naga solution ekta government of India logote before election solution ahibuli laga আমি গান হোপ কৰা সময় দে এতিয়া নাগা পলিটিক্যাল গ্ৰুপস Nscn কে কাংগো লগা পাৰ্টি আৰু Isak Sumi লগা মাজতে ইটো ঝামেলা পৰা ইটো পিস টক্স তো হ্যাম্পাৰ হ'ব না নহব নইলে NNBG's কনভেনাৰ এন কিটভি জুমমি পৰা ইটো লগা ওপৰে কি কয় ইটো ডাঙৰ কথা আছে হলিবি ভিউয়াৰ্স কান আজি আমি কান ইয়াতে প্ৰেছ কনফাৰেন্স শুরু হলি টাইম হৈছে আৰু আমি কান ইয়াতে ব্যাকগ্ৰাউণ্ডে দেখিব ইটো Toluvi ভিলেজ তে Isak Sumi লগা personal residence te yadi matina ase tight security ase apuni kan moi camera person ki request koribo idu tight security ase apuni kan dikhibo entry kan sob yade tik tak likhi ase holibi we are very fortunate that ami kan yadi media hobra aji idu laga permission pai gina ami kan idu laga moka paise aro ibi idu meeting to shuru hobole ase to aji laga press conference to kiniga chulibo Nscn ke Khango party aro Nscn ke Isak Sumi taijundo reconcile korina eki logote age NNBG's logot jabona yate aji ekta split Nscn ke Isak Sumi party notun olabole ase viewers kan sai thakibi ami kan ite press conference laga detail report sai sabo
Before we proceed with the interaction, I would like to request, ladies and gentlemen, that I do not want to create any controversy or I do not like to engage in any mudslinging or personal attacks. So I would like to request each of you to kindly, if needed, focus only on the relevant issue which is relevant, questions which is relevant to the issue. So that is my earnest request. Before taking your question, I would like to share a brief testimony of mine, a brief journey of mine during the course of my struggle in the cause. I intentionally chose this particular day, the Sunday, which is considered very special and spiritual for the Christian world. Recently, there has been a development within our government, an unfortunate development. And even though my credibility, my integrity has been challenged and shadow has been cast on my characters. However, I would not like to defend myself. I chose this personal day, this Sunday, because I would like to bare myself naked before the Naga people and before God. As a human being, and still a young blood, during my almost 2-decade journey in the Naga struggle, and I being basically from the military setup, from the military formation, we have committed lots of unfortunate atrocities while in the battle, while in the conflict, but that was nothing personal, and it was all circumstantial. It was all because of the issue-related conflict-related. I've been through so many hell. I've faced death many times. Many of my comrades before me, besides me, behind me, they have fallen in the battle. We have taken lives of the adversaries, but for the cause. We feel very sorry and we regret for the loss of lives that has incurred all through the struggle. Either friend or enemy, a soldier is to be honored, and therefore I pay my tribute to all the fallen heroes and soldiers, regardless of friends or enemies. Now, I would like to refocus on the few allegations that has been made against me, especially with regard to my personal characters, my personal conduct. I feel convinced and I feel very grateful to my comrades and calm accusers for exposing certain uncomfortable personal issues in the media. Now I realize that in order to represent my people, in order to represent the Nagas, and in order to be true to the calling Nagaland for Christ, a person who has a darker side of the story kept in concealment, I feel that they should not lead the Nagas. So I took the opportunity today and I would like to make myself clear before the Nagas, before God and before the world, and let them take their own judgment. So in the year 2015, we abrogated the ceasefire with the government of India, and we went back to the war path. I crossed over to the Naga Myanmar area. I was stationed there for at least 3 to 4 years. The environment is such that it happens to be a location where it is close to Golden Triangle. And even in the Naga area still now, opium cultivation is a source of income. Opium itself is a cash, it's a currency, it's a food. Even the church members, because of the lack of economic development in the area, opium is still used as a currency of exchange. During my graduation and post-graduation day, I have already become a social drinker. I also had a brief stint in the media. Even though I do not have a media diplomat certificate, I also did my internship at IAMC Delhi under the patronage of the Nagaland University. And then after I joined the Naga struggle, gradually as I've said, when we crossed over to Naga Myanmar area after the abrogation of ceasefire, we were placed in such an environment where the temptation was too strong, and because of the lack of any other amenities or medical facilities, I became addicted to opium. And gradually it progressed to heroin. So I was addicted to opium and heroin for at least 3-4 years while there in Burma. But the crisis erupted in the Nscn government due to the sudden expiry of SS Kaplang. So I would like to make a connection with that. In the year 2017, SS Kaplang expired suddenly. And our former president, Baba Khango, he was also stationed somewhere away from the council, which was located in the Kaka area. I was also deployed somewhere in the border area. So while going down to SS Kaplang's funeral, I happened to meet our Baba Lieutenant General, former President Baba Khango, at Khamti. And so before we proceed down to Taka for the funeral of our president, we already received the news that the incumbent Army Chief General Kumchop has been appointed as the interim president. So it was a very shocking news because the incumbent vice president was Baba Khango, and even before we reached the federal spot, they have already elected the interim president. And therefore, I convinced him not to worry about it because we have the constitution and the constitution will speak. And therefore, we proceed down, and then I convinced the interim president's son, who was also working with us. I spoke to the Pangmi leaders, I spoke to Connect leaders, I spoke to Sumi leaders there in the council, and then I offered my advice that until that day we achieve our victory, until the day the struggle culminates into victory, we should be guiding our forces, we should be directing our forces, and we should ourselves abide by the Constitution, or else there will be no more law and order, there will be no more order, and there will be no more, the sanctity of the government will no more be there, and the ethos of the revolutionary struggle will erode. And therefore we must abide by the Constitution. Somehow we convinced them, and Baba Khango was appointed as the president. In that time, he can testify to that as to what extent I tried to diffuse the conflict in that time also. And so, for a year, he served as the president. But since he cannot acclimatize himself with the hot weather down there in the valley, so he went back to his previous camp. He entrusted one of his peers to carry out his activities. And then it seems he gave certain uncomfortable directive to the finance workers. So it seems there was some miscommunication. And therefore, especially the Pangmi leaders, they convened an emergency meeting, and then all of a sudden they impeached the president. And when the impeachment of the president reached me, I was stationed far away from Baba Khango. And then Baba Khango, since he has been expelled, especially at the instigation, especially with the plan of the Pangmi leaders, and since the majority of the Naga inhabited areas are settled by the Pangmis, so he decided to leave Pangmi area and then escape to his Connect area. So it seems his nephew, who is a Kilonser now with us, he was the only Kilonser with him, and some of his boys, they somehow managed to reach his Connect area safely without any untoward incident. And then I was told that since there was no telephonic facility also, we could not communicate. So when some of the Connect community leaders, they crossed over the border and reached me, we had certain interaction and we met some strategies. I wrote a confidential letter and sent it to Baba Khango, saying that until and unless I reach there, give no press statement, make no commitment, whatever may be the approach from different factions, give no response, just wait for me. I sent a confidential letter to Baba Khango through the ex-Connect Student Union General Secretary. They can testify. And so before reaching Baba Khango, I communicated with the GHQ, and then the GHQ camp commander and all the high-ranking officers in the GHQ, and they agreed to my proposal. That since the Nagas from Indian side, they are all longing for an early solution. And even though we Nagas are all brothers, the Nagas are already divided by an artificial boundary, and the Nagas are primarily divided into Myanmar Nagas and Indian Nagas. So it is not conceivable at the moment that there will be a one solution for all the Nagas. That became impossible. And so I reasoned with them, for the time being, the Nagas of Indian side, let us go for a settlement with the government of India. In the meantime, we can also assist in whatever manner and help the Naga brothers in Myanmar to have a solution with the Myanmar government, so that when the time comes, the Nagas may once again try to work out Indo-Naga-Myanmar issue in one table, tripartite negotiation. That's what I proposed. And with the blessing of God, without any violence or without any misunderstanding, the majority of the Nagas from the Indian side, we all went on one day, and we went, after trekking jungle, we went together to reach Baba Khango camp. After that, I went to the border where I could avail the phone facility, and then I contacted the Indian leaders, and I gave them the commitment that give us 2 days, 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. Within that time frame, I will organize my colleagues and gathers, and we will try to enter into the negotiation. But even before that, the government of India has been sending their feelers to come over and enter into the abrogated peace process. So that was a brief past history. And we sent the representative Naga leaders representing our interests to the government of India. The government of India responded positively, and so we entered into the peace process, and thus began our new chapter in the Indian side. Now, preparing to cross over to Indian side, I cannot, with that addicted state, I don't find myself in a position to cross over in such a manner, so I called over my wife. He came with all the first aids, all the medicines, and for at least 2-3 weeks, I had a very excruciating ordeal. But finally, I managed to give up heroin, and then we crossed over to Indian side. But since the recovery is a long process, gradually I started drinking again. And at least for a year, I was heavily entangled in drinking. But then there was a lot of dissatisfaction, there was a lot of mistakes I started committing. So I realized that in order to bring changes, I should change myself. And so, thinking so seriously about myself and my role as a representative of the Nagas negotiating with the government of India, I had to re-evaluate myself. I have to set an example myself. I have to set an example for my comrades and others to follow. So I took the firm decision that I shall no longer indulge in these things. And with God's grace and with the support of my wife, my family, and my friends, after undergoing treatment for several times, I finally gave up all the abuses, substance abuses, alcoholic addiction, and then it's been 2 years now that I have been freed from all these kind of antisocial characters. Therefore, today, what I would like to convey my message to our people is that we know that the Israelites, they were the chosen people. And God has his responsibility and his own obligation there. But for we Nagas, we decided ourselves to choose God, and so we declared Nagaland for Christ on our own volition. So we have greater responsibility. And since the evil forces will do everything in their power to smear the banner Nagaland for Christ, and since we are not that strong enough to resist the evil forces, and therefore it is especially the national workers who are supposed to be the example of the teachings of Jesus Christ, we have become the most notorious characters, including myself. And with evil forces actively conniving to destroy the commitment that the Nagas has declared, the division, the killing, fratricidal violence, it started since the unfortunate 1975 Shillong Accord. And now the splits, the divisions, the infightings, it has become the order of the day. Now extortions, killings, intimidation, threat, it has become more or less identified with the national workers. Now the Nagas are eroding, the confidence of the Naga people are already eroding. Even in this particular controversy, I would not blame Baba Khango because he's a very senior leader. He's a veteran of 1960. He has been to China twice, and he's one of the most foremost and one of the most ablest commander in the Naga army who is still alive today. Therefore, regardless of the misguidance, regardless of the plot that has been orchestrated by others, and he has been misguided, he has been misdirected, I do not lay any blame on him because all this crisis did not originate from him itself. It has been fed by the others. These things, it will come to light, I believe, in the right time, those people responsible for it. So I would not comment on that. So, and I do not like to smear his reputation or his image because he was a very fatherly figure to me. And he has also reached his concluding stages of life. So all his efforts and sacrifices, I cannot allow myself to smear his image or his sacrifices under any circumstances. And therefore, despite my termination order issued without consulting even a single worker of the Nscn, it was only his nephew, Mr. Shellen, and he alone and Baba Khango alone, with the instigation of others, without consulting even a single other national workers, Baba Khango issued a termination order unconstitutionally, arbitrarily, and therefore, if I were in his position or if he were in my position, I may resort to so much mudslinging or character assassination or cheap propagandas, but that I cannot allow myself to go down to that level. And so I extended an olive branch and made an appeal to Baba Khango that despite all my weaknesses, I being like your son, if you could kindly forgive me, I'm still ready to make apology, ask for forgiveness, and reconcile and go together. So also, our Honorable Convener of the Working Committee, NNPG, he also made an appeal to Baba Khango to revoke his order, and therefore we waited for him for 2-3 days, but there was no positive response. And therefore, our government, with all the branches, civil wing, political wing, secretariat wing, almost 99% of the regional authorities, almost 90% of the grassroots level workers, led by the Home Kilonser, led by the Tatar Hoho, Parliament Hoho Speaker, led by the Chief Secretary, led by the ceasefire supervisor, and led by their senior army commanders. They convened an emergency meeting. And since the positive response was not forthcoming from Baba Khango, they adopted a resolution that Baba Khango will be impeached, and our incumbent Vice President, Luyanbai Yimkung, will be appointed as the acting president. So it is very unfortunate. It was not my personal decision. It was the decision of the entire setup. Because of certain unfortunate incident, we cannot get stuck with that and lose sight of the goal that we are pursuing. So we will continue to carry on with the tasks which have been entrusted to us. We will honor the ceasefire agreement which we have arrived at with the government of India. And I will continue to be the co-convener of the Working Committee, NNPG, representing our Nscn GPRN. And the NNPG Working Committee has also had an emergency meeting and took a resolution that even if single person remains with Isak, we will not desert him. Even if 1,000 return to Baba Khango, we cannot accept him. Because at this very crucial juncture, when the entire Nagas are longing for an early solution, and when the unity of the Nagas is so imminent, why should he resort to such unconstitutional and unilateral act, which clearly is designed to sabotage the peace process and the Nagas call for early solution? That is the reason why the NNPGs also collectively made a decision that if Baba Khango refused to comply to our appeal, then the NSNK may take its own course of action, which, if it is done in a proper procedure manner, then the NNPG Working Committee will also endorse it. And that is the reason why we have arrived at the decision that Baba Khango should be impeached, so that we can pursue our goal unhindered. And so that is what I would like to interact with you today. So thank you so much, and if you would like to ask certain questions, let's go ahead with that.
sense is that Sir Khango wants to reconcile and for the betterment of the Nagas, and also since we are able to getting closer to Naga solution, if he wants to work together, forgiving and forgetting what actually happened. So, are you willing to come to this agreement?
I have made myself very clear that I do not harbor any ill feelings towards Baba Khango. I'm still ready for reconciliation. However, since our government has already adopted an impeachment resolution, I will have to convince my cabinet, the Council of Kilonsers, and the entire House. I have to convince them to revoke the decision. If Baba is willing, I'm all the time willing. That's what I would like to say.
So that the president, the vice president would be is going to be a president.
Yeah, that's the procedure. In the absence or in the event of expiry or termination of the president, the vice president automatically assumes the acting president's role.
Have you conveyed to the government of India about the recent developments?
The government of India is taking stock of the entire situation. We are having a constant intimation with the government of India through all the proper channels.
So, if you have any question, Baba Khango over Council of Ministers decision impeachment so that activation part of the office.
No, it's already done. Yeah.
So that means the party workers, functionaries under Khango Kundo do illegal India consider Corona that party workers Kando party join. Are you willing to take them?
Yeah, I got your point. You see, we are not trying to form a new government. It is not in our interest or in our intention to form a new government. It is just the removal of the impeachment of the president. Otherwise, the entire setup remains intact.
So, sir, one more question. So, as per the sources, all the regions are with you, with your government. So, how about the Konyak region?
Konyak region, the authority, they are giving intimation through the phone, but physically they have not reached here. And so, yeah, I understand the position also.
Sir, just one more thing. Since you mentioned that Sir Khango has already been impeached,
Yeah.
what about his the forces that are with him?
What is the strength of the forces and the strength that you have? What is the percentage you would say?
The entire civil wing, the political wing, all the branches of the government, except for two Kilonser, except for two secretary, the entire political wing, civil wing, and all the, at least 95% of the regional authorities, they are entirely with me and the incumbent acting president. Whereas for the military, two senior commanders, our army chief and the deputy chief, they are still at the camp, designated camp, which is in Baba Khango's village. So it is good that I make no comment on that because the situation is dicey. And since we are trying our best effort to reconcile, not to create any other new group, let me be very, I should say, it's not an appropriate time to make comment on such thing.
Are you also planning to ask for a designated camp for yourself?
No, we still have a designated camp. So what will be the development, how the situation will evolve, and to what extent the government of India will intervene, and to what extent the Naga people will react, or taking all this into consideration, let the situation evolve.
So, as you say, you already have your designated camp.
Yeah.
So, designated camp was impeachment. So,
No, it was not in the camp. It was in his village and in his personal residence. Because the deputy army chief and the deputy chief themselves spoke over the phone in the presence of so many of us through the loudspeaker. They denied that they have no involvement, they have no information, they have no consent, And so even include our name as signed in absentia, include our name in the condemnation of this act.
So which means the designated game which has been provided to you is well being in your hand.
Yeah, it still belongs to the government, and the government setup is still intact. And since we have only one designated camp, and we still have only one government, it belongs to all of us.
What if you had mentioned that there won't be a new government? I mean, that is not in the books for you and your group. But then, what if the other side does that? Would you accept the nomenclature of the group? Because usually that is what happens when we've seen it in the past, that the nomenclature remains the same, and then there's a big confusion between two governments.
No, it is the prefix. I mean, it is the suffix added by the press fraternity for identification because of so many factions. Otherwise, it has always been Nscn GPRN. So whatever suffix you find it comfortable to use, you can go ahead with that. I hope I was not very boring. Wish you all the best. We'll keep meeting.